So hello, my name is Damian and I'm a React native developer, and today I will talk about the platform specific code which are mostly common thing in React Native when we are building mobile applications. So what's going on with the platform specific code? So when we are building a cross-platform applications, we have to care about some native features that are different on the Android and iOS. And there are a bunch of features implemented in React Native, which provides us some helpers which we can use to get actual code that we need on the specific platform, like iOS or Android, or even versioning. So let's get started. So we can use a specific styling for the actual React Native on the iOS and Android. There are a few differences. When we are using some height of the actual bars for the iOS and Android, and this is something cool that we can use some specific module that is platform, and by just calling a iOS object, we can get actual on which operating system is our application running. And as you can see, we can make a specific height of the maybe top bar or status bar of the application, and this will work as cool as it should. When we are running on the iOS, we get the 200. When we are running on the other system like Android or Windows, but we are not coding in Windows because it's that. So this is something like, and another thing that is function for the React Native, also from platform module, is something like select. And just by defining some keys like iOS and Android, we can get some selection for the specific platform. And as you can see, for the iOS, there's something like background color red, and for Android, just by running this command, this will just apply the actual stylings for our components, and on Android and on iOS they will look just different. So the another thing that is specific to the React when we are creating not only style specifics but also a components that are that's behavior just is different. Like when we have checkboxes. On the Android, we can use just by default checkboxes like ticks, and on the iOS we want to specific ones because on the iOS they are just look badly or something like that. So we can create some kind of component that will require us some specific platforms just by the same function as select. And we can use this as normal component. Just by selection, we can require the other components that are maybe a component iOS and component Android. So it's kind of cool. When we are using something like push notifications, there are some differences in the API coded in the iOS and Android. And just by that, we can use the same name of the component and use the different ones just when we are running our application. Something new that was implemented something about 3 or 4 months before. We had something like detecting versioning, but also with the major and minor points. So we can detect the major version of the iOS, and just by that we can restrict some features that are not already implemented in the older versions. And also we can detect the whole Android versions like Nougat or Oreo, and when we want to just use the old styling for the whole applications, we can use the comparison of the versioning and use the old one API or styling, and on the newer version of Android we can use a new styles. So it's kind of cool. We can make a specific application with the different stylings for the even not only platforms but also a versioning. So it's kind of cool. And also there's a thing that is especially good because we can split the components and use the other extensions. So we are writing a component like a big button and use the bigbutton.ios.js and use big button on Android and .js, and there are created as specific components for the specific platforms. The code is splitted because we can just import it by one line. because the whole React Native platform is recognizing what kind of a checkbox it is, what kind of checkbox should be required and imported in our specific application. And just by adding those extensions, we can make differences for the specific platforms. So it's kind of cool. It helps us a lot. We can do more specific and more user-friendly platforms for the iOS and Android, because the API are different for the whole native system. Also, the behaviors on the iOS and Android are different. On Android we have a gestures or back button. On iOS we don't have it. And there's also some differences with the guidelines provided by Apple, and we have to follow them to make our application more user-friendly and acceptable by the Apple team. So so this is helping us a lot. So this is kind of cool because we can create even two specific apps that look different on the iOS and Android and running the same core system in our application. So just written by React Native. So it's kind of cool, and that's basically it. If you have any questions, I'm here. So if not,
do you need to have iOS or Android specific knowledge when you started with React Native?
Just with React Native, no, because we have coded in React Native something like specific components, like push notifications and push notification iOS, and they are provided just by the React Native. So you don't have to know the whole API that is behind the native stuff. You have to know the API that is using by React Native. So it's a JS API. So they look different, but it's still JS for the basics.
And for more advanced stuff you need to know?
Sometimes yes, but mostly we're using some wrappers or packages that are written by community, like React Native navigation from Wix, React Native notifications that are that behaves the same on both platforms, but they are coded differently with the approach of the APIs for the Android and iOS. So also it's kind of cool because when we have a knowledge of the packages, basically we can code the whole application without knowing anything of native stuff.
Except the linking.
Yeah, linking is something, but it's manual is in the documentation, so it's not actual native stuff. It's something like you have to do by Xcode or just yeah. Something more? If no, then thank you.